Before I get into this episode of Limitless, I've got to talk to you about my 68-page graphic novel, Everlasting Survivors, Volume 1, all day long. The second chance for you to pick up your copy is currently live and active on Indiegogo.com. There's a link to the campaign in the description of the video. There are multiple things that you can get this time around, not just cover A and cover B. There are a handful still available, not many, mind you, but a handful. There are now 2 poster options. There are 3 new covers. There's a t-shirt, there's a hat, there's all kinds of good stuff. If you're here, if you're enjoying Mr. Super Oz the channel, well, let me spoil it for you. The channel only exists to promote the fact that I wrote a 68-page graphic novel, Everlasting Survivors, Volume 1. And the reason that the channel exists to promote that is because I want to get more content out. I want to create more characters for everyone to love as much as I love the characters in this show. Limitless, Episode 12, The Assassination of Eddie M. We begin seeing Senator Mara's stage being set up for a speech, and then go to see a lady with a bunch of bags entering a hotel. Is she the stated assassin from the title, The Assassination of Eddie M? That'd be unexpected, having the assassin be a lady. Oh yeah, it is. She is the assassin in question, and she has NZT. Things are getting interesting. Here he is, the man that started it all, Eddie M. Senator Mara is so smart on NZT, he calls the shot before it is even taken. He just sees the slightest of light change, and he says, well, he didn't say it, but in his mind he's thinking about all the different headlines that could be, and he even figures out, oh, it's probably Piper. It's so fun that he plans out that the best course of action is let the bullet graze him to get the best headline. As we see the assassin, who now we know is named Piper, given being able to hear Mara thinking, as we see her leaving the hotel, it seems as though she's leaving something behind. They don't specifically show it, but she lingers on a painting on the room. We cut right to Brian being given his NZT pill for the day, and see Ike wearing a sling from, as a callback to the last episode, him taking a bullet for Mike. After Brian takes his pill, Ike tells him that he's needed upstairs in Naz's office, and when he gets there, he sees Mr. Sands is in Naz's office. Before Brian goes to talk with his team and Sands, he fantasizes all the negative outcomes that could come from this. After the meeting, which, went without incident because, of course it did, we see that Naz has pulled Harris into her office, and she asks how she's doing. Harris says, Boyle is the one who shot Casey. And Naz says, you are the one who was dating him, showing us that Naz knew more than we realized. Naz has Harris's back, which is, really good development. Naz with a really fun line, I've been single since I got here. You think I haven't slept with anyone? How else are we supposed to meet someone? We're really busy here. After we leave Naz's office, we see that Brian is getting onto an elevator that Mr. Sands is already on, and he tells Sands, he says, as soon as we get a lead, I'm going to pass it on to you. James, that sad FBI guy who Harris and Finch insisted join the cult because he was so sad, gets on the elevator, and as normal, he's an awkward, sad individual. As soon as James gets off the elevator, Sands reveals to Brian they know who shot the senator, and it's Brian's mission to ensure the FBI never figures it out. Brian basically rolls his eyes at Sands without actually rolling his eyes, but he demonstrates his frustration with this mission because it's so darn tough, keeping the FBI away from figuring out who actually did the job. After Brian is given his dictate from Sands, we see he is writing with Boyle. The funny thing is that even though Boyle is laying all the stuff out about what went down, we 100% know that Brian is ignoring him, but Boyle actually calls him out on it, and he honks the horn, and he says it's really rude. When they're at the scene, shockingly, Piper is sending Brian a message via Morse code and a laser sight from across the way. The message Piper sent was very puzzling, saying, "Find Sammy Petro or some old mob guy who hasn't been found since he went missing years ago." Harris told Boyle, "Maybe Finch is internalizing your negativity." Because even though Boyle believes he and Finch are okay, it's clear that Boyle is being a bit of a dick to not just Brian, but Harris also. Brian has run down a lead, and it is fun as hell. He tells the lead that he's going to make him an offer he can't refuse, being extra mobby. Brian is offering this lead a recording of his wife singing to their son. And just like Brian predicted, the dude who he calls Johnny Opera doesn't refuse the offer, and Brian gets the information on where Johnny took Sammy's body when he was disposing of it years ago for the mob. When Brian walks onto the scene that Sammy was left at, where Johnny told him he dumped the body, he sees Piper has a working station, gun and computer and wigs, but on the monitor that the computer is hooked up to, Brian sees that Piper is with his family. And, obviously this is not a good development in Brian's mind because he's been very defensive of his family. So he races to his parents' house. And when Brian arrives, his mom says, "Oh, come sit. We're just getting to know your new girlfriend." Piper's so smart, way to go, NZT. Brian's parents fully believe Piper, which is funny. And so Brian, trying not to alarm them, asks Piper to meet him out front on the porch so they can talk. He's playing it off as though he wasn't ready for them to meet her, but in reality, he's trying to make sure she ain't out to hurt his parents. And the more Piper talks, the more it seems she could actually be the babyface in this scenario. Piper is telling Brian about how Maura corrupted her, and when she broke away is when he framed her for the murder of her boyfriend. This is a really great episode. Brian figures out that Piper is running out of NCT, or maybe even the blocker. Piper tells Brian there is only one way out, and we have to kill Eddie Mara. After Brian has this meeting with Piper, he texts Sands. He says, "I talked to Piper. I want to meet. Not with you, with him." And bam, we cut straight to a car pulling up to Brian, and Brian pulls no punches in this meeting. Brian's only question to Mara is, "Did you kill Piper's boyfriend?" Mara denies it, basically making it seem as though it's beneath him. I mean, he makes it clear that killing someone's not beneath him, but this particular death wouldn't have meant anything to him. And that in Mara's mind, it would mean much more if it was Piper who killed her boyfriend due to the side effects of NCT and not himself. After Brian meets with Mara, Sands basically, and not even basically, but he holds the blocker shot up as collateral to Brian and says that he has to kill Piper to get it. And that when you're done, just throw this gun that is untraceable in the river. After this crazy turn of events, the next morning, Harris and Boyle have a woman in custody who claims to have been the shooter. Brian and we, the audience, know better than that. But there's no way for Brian to tell the FBI that this woman is the wrong person without outing the fact that he is working with Mara and is out to kill Piper anyway. Brian is so conflicted that he's having the good/bad Brian talking to himself, and it's gotten so bad that he's now imagining a good Harris and an imaginary bad Sands, and then Ike shows up and doesn't know which team to be on. Brian gets so mad and he yells at his imagination, and all these extra folks disappear, and they're replaced with just one representation of Brian's psyche, and that being his father. His dad lays it out that you just have to go with your gut since you can't really use the facts in this case since they're both so good at manipulating things with the NCT. After Brian's dad, well, his imaginary dad, convinces him to take a course of action, we cut back to Harris, who isn't completely convinced herself that this woman who's come to confess is the right one. She lays her points out to Boyle, and it feels like that everything's just going too easy in his mind. But, they're just going with it because what other choice do they have? We see Piper and Brian meet up. Brian tries to take a shot at her, but she blocks him. As she runs away, it seems like Brian has pushed Piper into an oncoming train, but this just doesn't feel true to our hero that we know. After the event that makes it seem as though he killed Piper, we see that Brian is now with Sands, and Sands says a really great line. He said, "For a botched plan, everything went pretty well." Brian is super messed up. Sands is explaining to him the first time he killed and how that experience changed him. But he ends by saying that the strong eat the weak, the same as it ever was, which is just Sands going on to prove that he is still the hard enforcer of Eddie Mora. The next morning, when Brian shows up to the FBI, Harris says that you picked a heck of a day to be late because you missed Senator Mara coming by to thank all of us personally. Only Brian didn't miss Eddie. Eddie is in Brian's headquarters at his desk. Mara asks Brian, "Why are you trying so hard to hold on to the person you were before NCT?" Brian says, "It's who I am," and Mara replies, "It doesn't have to be." Yeah, so Brian didn't kill Piper, which is great. It's revealed to us, the audience, because like Brian the character says, I'm not hiding it from you. That they worked this plan out and it rocks. It really helps me continue to believe in our hero. When I see that it's revealed Brian didn't kill Piper, I immediately write down, it's a spectacular episode, 6 out of 5. I hate that this show was canceled. It just... it feels like it deserves so much more. But then, after I wrote that, I said, I take it back. It's not a 6 out of 5. It is a 7 out of 5. Perfect episode because Harris has figured out that Mara is on NCT. I want more of this world.